What up, Mini family? My name is Scott, the Miniature Maniac, and in the past week, I visited Adepticon, one of the largest, if not the largest, miniature hobby convention in the world. I had the privilege of sitting down with one of the founders of the show to interview him about the history of the show. Enjoy.
My name is Matt Weeks. I am one of the original two founders of Adepticon. I grew up in like the 80s, 90s punk scene, very DIY, and I bring a lot of that sort of like shows shouldn't be more than $5 kind of attitude to this event, and I like to keep our prices down, and we have an open door policy that is like kind of unheard of in the convention world. I kind of bring a lot of that in, much to maybe some of my partners, chagrin or whatever. Right out of the gate, we started a local wargaming community that was based around a classic bulletin board kind of setting where we were trying to like organize the Chicago area 40K community at the time, really. And that just kind of led us into running our own events, then running our events at other cons, and then eventually us saying, we should probably have our own con. In the very, very beginning, Adepticon was a non-for-profit organization. We were just running events, trying to break even, losing money, whatever it took for 3-4 years until like we kind of figured out, we could do it this way. And we made a really big effort to go out to local areas in the Midwest or local groups in the Midwest that were playing 40K or Warhammer Fantasy at the time or Battlefleet Gothic or whatever was out at the time, and basically trying to say, hey, we're doing this thing and we want you to come and want you to be a part of it. And that's when we had to kind of like, we have to take this seriously now. So we started off with one exhibitor, and that wasn't even the first year. It might have been like the third or fourth year. We said, hey, let's have an exhibitor. And we brought in our friend Todd, who used to run a shop called Crooked Hat Games. And he just set up like some card tables and threw out some Flames of War models or whatever and sold them. And he's still an exhibitor here to this day. He now has 2 shops called Grognard Games. And now it's crazy, right? I mean, now we're like legitimately talking to companies. Before it was kind of like, let's just get who we can get. We had a good relationship with Games Workshop for years, and they used to come in and vend originally, and they originally got us Forge World to come over in the beginning when we were still maybe 2,000 attendees. And that was a really big deal, right? Like Forge World coming to an event that wasn't Games Day or something. And now, it's like almost every major miniature producing company is here or wants to be here in some capacity. And people want to do reveals here and run world championship events here and stuff. So yeah, it's cool. Like it's pretty far beyond, I think, what we ever envisioned this really was going to be. We were pretty locally minded originally, right? Adepticon's primarily a volunteer-based organization. Nobody's doing this full-time all year long. We have a board of directors that runs Adepticon because, of course, the convention needs to have some legal presence or some legal entity to exist, right? Taxes, you name it. I think this is the official 19th event. The first official Adepticon was 2003. It wasn't a standalone convention. It was still the 40K events at another convention. And that was like the first 2 years where we came in and we ran events for an Ides of March, which was related to a local shop around here called Hobbytown USA. But we still consider 2003 Adepticon 1 because it was branded Adepticon. It was kind of like a con within a con sort of thing. I want to say 5 times we've moved locations over the last 20-ish years. We've been here at this Schaumburg Renaissance or the Renaissance Convention Center since 2014, I want to say. And prior to that, we were out in Lombard, Illinois, at a venue we had a great relationship, but we just outgrew. We were in the hallways and like thinking about setting a Four Seasons tent up in the parking lot. There was just no way we could stay there anymore. Honestly, kind of starting to hit that point here now too, and there's not a lot of options after here. So when you go to run an event of this size, things start to go in motion that you kind of can't stop once they start, and everything is sort of domino affecting everything else. So if I move this event here and I take tables from here, then I guess, table layout's like insanely complicated. Vendor hall layout, complicated. Keeping track of 6,000 attendees, at least a third of them, which all have some like very specific need or question or accommodation, can be difficult, especially when you're, volunteer organization, everybody's got a regular day job and you're trying to do I gotta take care of this, I gotta do that, I gotta do this. We spend a lot of time on meetings. We spend a lot of time talking to partners like Atomic Mass Games or Games Workshop or whoever it might be, trying to figure out how the logistics for a particular event are gonna run, Warhammer preview, painting competitions, whatever. So most of that is done by myself and Hank Edley, and then we have a hotel and an exhibitor team. But there's, maybe 10 core people that are doing logistical organization throughout the 10 months maybe leading up to the event, I would say. And when we get down to running the convention, I think there's a couple of different ways it's approached. We have a lot of people who come on site the weekend of, work registration, work the GM check-in area, work prize support, just run stuff around, help set up. We have a storage facility in central Illinois where we keep everything, and it took 4 semi-trucks to get everything up and probably close to 120 people to break all that out, set up tables, terrain, mat, glass cabinets, everything. So overall on the weekend of Adepticon, I think we probably have somewhere around 200 or 250 volunteers, and that probably is even a little bit higher if we start to add in just people that are just like running events. They want to come in and run Mordheim, or they want to come in and run, some demos for some new ship battle game they're making or whatever. So, and then kind of in the off season, there's another kind of core group, the people that kind of can't stop working on the convention. And that's probably about maybe, fluctuates between 30 and 40 people probably that come in and out, paint terrain, build terrain, clean terrain, help us assemble all the medals, collecting award titles and things like that, are helping us build an event schedule, track down people to get event packets, like all of those types of things. That's probably about 30 to 40 kind of hardcore people. And then, out of that, there's like 10 of us that don't ever get to do anything else. The scale of this event's gotten so big, we have to kind of look outside to find answers for problems that we weren't necessarily ever really imagining we'd be dealing with. And a lot of that comes from the scale of things and conduct policies and things we never really had to think about before that are now things that people expect when they come to an event to feel safe or to feel like they have some guardrails around their experience at the event. So often, we're gonna look above us, like the bigger events, Gen Con and things like that. What are they doing? They publish their conduct policy under Creative Commons. And I was like, yeah, why wouldn't we just use parts of this? It's well written and it makes a lot of sense and we can tweak it to fit our needs. But yeah, we're definitely at the point where we have to be open to learning something again, because we can't really rinse and repeat some certain things anymore because it's just not feasible at this scale, I think, Adepticon's changed a lot over the last 20 years. For starters, we used to be really just a day and a half event. Friday was even kind of an afterthought. We would run a 40K Gladiator kind of cheese beat stick kind of event on Friday night just for the fun of it. The sheer amount of time that the event occurs, the amount of time it takes to set up and break down has just expanded exponentially over 20 years. I think the other factor is we were only a Games Workshop event when we started. Just 40K and Warhammer Fantasy and maybe some of the specialist stuff on the side. And I think it was 4 or 5 years into it where we had to make a decision. Is that what we are? Are we a Games Workshop event? Because we stepped in to fill a void at the time when Games Workshop stopped doing grand tournaments. They weren't a thing. We all came from that scene. I used to travel all over the place and play grand tournaments. And all of the guys that started Adepticon, that's where we kind of cut our teeth. And I wasn't there anymore. And we were like, oh man, we should run our own grand tournament essentially. There was a lull in our relationship with Games Workshop around that time. And we were like, okay, well, what else is there? And we'd all started playing other stuff. I had Flames of War Army started, and we were doing this and doing that. So that's where we ended up, deciding, okay, cool, War Machine, in. Flames of War, in. Let's start bringing in other game systems. And that's really when it okay, it's now on a track where it's gonna blow up eventually and we can't stop it. In the beginning, when we first started Adepticon, we used to run our own painting competitions at Adepticon, and it was affectionately dubbed the Rogue Demon, because we just kind of did our own thing. And it was a very amateur painting competition. It was the local people We made our own little medals, and we had some of our friends who helped us run Adepticon that were actually decent painters just judge it, and it was a very casual, fun thing that almost anybody could have entered, right? We weren't drawing anyone from Europe or anything that was going to come in and like smash the competition. And we did that for a long time, and it became very difficult to do. We stopped it for a while, just because we really didn't have a structure around it or a staff to run it effectively. And then Cool Mini came up with the crystal brush idea and brought it to us. And we were like, yeah, it sounds a lot like what we kind of used to do. But then they, of course, put a nice big fat monetary prize on it, which drew people out. And for the first few years, it was cool. But I think eventually we realized that this is the type of event that a very, very small number of people can compete for, right? And for years, it brought incredible pieces of art to the convention. It was great. Like the spirit of what we were doing at the Rogue Trader, what we wanted to see, kind of got lost a little bit. And like, we weren't really sure what to do with it for a while. And then when the crystal brush kind of went away, we were like, okay, well, what do we do now? Like, now we're at this scale where like, we couldn't handle our own painting competition 6-7 years ago. How are we gonna do it now? It just happened to coincide with Games Workshop saying, hey, we're gonna think about bringing the Golden Demon back, And we jumped at that as fast as we could, because why wouldn't you? It does create an instance where, that is a very company specific, and it suddenly stopped the sort of inclusive entry of the crystal brush. But we also were very open to having other painting competitions at the event, and that seems to generally have worked out pretty well. What the future holds in that regard, I don't know, it's hard to say. We just kind of have to go with the flow on that, and we'll see. Hopefully things can continue to grow and we can find other ways to engage the painting community or the art side of the hobby, because I think that's a huge draw. We have people here, that's all they do. They buy a badge and they buy like 2 classes a day. There's almost a convention within a convention in that aspect, because that community that's online, that's so connected online, all of a sudden it's like, oh, we're face to face now. And that's the thing I think that brings me the greatest like joy, or at least dulls the pain of organizing this event, is seeing that type of interaction, is seeing like people so excited to see people that they only know perhaps in an online persona, or have learned so much from YouTube or Twitch or whatever. As much as leading up to this event, I feel like I'm about to fall apart or break or whatever. When I leave this event, I'm often pretty reinvigorated in terms of like my own personal hobby journey, or me wanting to get back and pick up a brush or do whatever. But I'm also reminded that, it's worth it, at the end. So the future of Adepticon is, it's constantly being rewritten. We have our challenges ahead of us, and solving those are probably the most important thing for us right now. Every single event or exhibitor has said to us at one point in time already this weekend, come back next year and we want more space. Every single thing, from a game club running Mordheim tables in one of the little back rooms, to every exhibitor in this hall, you name it, right? So there's not an inch right here to spare at all. So that's going to be the biggest challenge for us. Big expansion in the works for this venue, though. They're adding supposedly a significant amount of convention space, a parking garage, all of these things. We just needed it 2 years ago. So, we love this venue. We loved our old venue too, but it just came to a point where it's not feasible anymore. Do we hit that with this? I don't know. If the answer is yes, we can't stay here anymore, then I don't know where we go. Moving this event from our old venue to this venue 7 years ago or whatever it was, the whole event was like a third of the size. So moving it to here with all of the space to spare was relatively simple, but there's still a lot of logistical work. You gotta acquaint yourself with the venue again. You've been working with a subset of people at the hotel for 6-7 years, and they know what you guys do. And now you got to go to this new place and they're like, wait, what? You know, what is this thing? This is crazy. I don't know what this is. I'm also a proponent of this event is what this event can be. And that's all it can be, you know? Like, I think there's okay in saying that. Like, we don't have an office. We don't have 12 people working year round for us. I mean, you know, we're doing this on nights and weekends. We have a limit, I guess, at the end of the day. So there's that too. And none of us are getting younger, so.
We are indeed not getting any younger, Matt. Historical wargaming is coming for us all, and there is nothing we can do about it. Huge shout out to Matt and the Adepticon staff for allowing me to interview them for my video. I've been going to Adepticon since 2016, and I've always had an absolute blast at the show. If there's one convention you can go to a year, it should be this one. If you guys enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up. If you like the channel and want to support it, consider checking out my merch store, where you can find cool hobby tools like this awesome double-sided cutting mat with an imperial grid on one side and a metric on the other. That's a meaty 3mm thick, and also self-healing. While on the merch store, you can also pick up my model, the Duchess, a 75mm vampire figure, and a digital course that goes along with the model that can be purchased for $10 cheaper when combined with the Mini. It teaches you how to paint the model and explains every step in extreme detail. Aside from that, you can also check out my Patreon. For $2 a month, you get access to my Discord and also my behind-the-scenes posts where I talk about what's going on in my studio and sometimes show video of my more complicated videography setups. For $10 a month, you get access to supercuts of my videos that show a lot more footage of the painting process of the various videos on my channel with my narration on top of it. Subscribe or die! But most importantly, don't forget to paint my minis!